She said it over dessert. I wish you were never born. Everyone laughed, except me. I set my fork down slowly. My chest was on fire. But I smiled anyway. Then I gave my one line. Well, Amanda, the feeling is mutual. The only difference? I actually have the power to make that wish come true. The room went silent. Silent in a way that felt like glass breaking. That was the last night I ever sat at my mother's table. My name is Catherine. 32 years old. High school teacher. Divorced. Invisible for 3 decades. What they didn't realize, I was about to vanish from their lives entirely. And when I did, their perfect little family would never be the same again. Sometimes absence is the sharpest revenge. I'm the middle child of 3 daughters. Jessica, the oldest, was the golden child. Straight A student, debate champion, future lawyer. Even her mistakes were framed as learning experiences. Amanda, the youngest, was the artist. Free-spirited, dramatic, showered with affection. Even when she failed to launch. Creative souls need freedom, Mom would say, while she painted in the basement at 28. And then there was me, Catherine. High school English teacher. Divorced, no kids, modest apartment. Not a failure by normal standards. But in my family, I was the invisible one. I grew up carrying that role quietly. At 10, I won a district essay contest. Mom skimmed the certificate, then turned to Jessica's science fair project. At least this might get her a scholarship, she said. At 12, I tried out for choir. Amanda's artwork was taped to the fridge, but my solo performance went unmentioned. You have a nice hobby, Dad said vaguely, as if teaching myself music was a side note, not an achievement. Birthdays blurred together. One year, my cake was store-bought, while Jessica's came with custom decorations, and Amanda's with a handmade crown. I smiled in every photo, but inside I felt like furniture, necessary, but never admired. By the time I reached adulthood, my role was fixed, the caretaker of family peace, the one who remembered birthdays, who showed up early to help set the table, who listened patiently when everyone else vented. I carried everyone's burdens, but no one carried mine. At that dinner table, listening to them laugh at my expense, I realized it had always been this way, and I knew something inside me was about to snap for good. The dinner was supposed to be a celebration. Jessica had just made senior partner at her law firm. Mom polished the good china. Lasagna in the oven. Cake cooling on the counter. Dad was already glowing with pride before we even sat down. Jessica talked about her courtroom wins, her new BMW, and the vacation house she and Robert were eyeing. Amanda pulled out her phone, scrolling through photos of abstract paintings. Everyone leaned in, ohing and eyeing, as if she were Picasso reincarnated. When it was my turn, I mentioned a student of mine who had just won a regional writing contest. A child I had mentored, poured hours into coaching. Oh, that's nice, honey, Mom said absently, already turning back to Jessica. Jess, tell us more about that case you won. The dismissal stung, but it was nothing new. I forced a smile, swallowed the bitterness, and let the conversation roll past me. That's how it always went. Jessica's triumphs were headlines. Amanda's hobbies became sacred art. And my victories? Footnotes no one bothered to read. I was the glue, always smoothing over conflict, remembering birthdays, bringing thoughtful gifts, showing up. Yet somehow, I was still invisible. The lasagna was cleared, the wine glasses refilled. My father raised a toast, his words soaked with pride for Jessica. Amanda chimed in with jokes, her voice bright and theatrical. The room sparkled with laughter. Except for me. I sat quietly, fork tracing circles on my plate, half there, half gone, wondering why I even came. When dessert arrived, the air grew sweeter and sharper. Mom's chocolate cake, frosted to perfection, was placed before us. For others, a symbol of family love. For me, a reminder of birthdays forgotten, moments minimized, pain disguised as humor. The stories started flowing. Jessica and Amanda recounted how they once convinced me I was adopted. Poor Catherine, Mom chuckled. So gullible. Dad laughed so hard he nearly dropped his fork. I smiled thinly. But inside, something was beginning to fracture. Another round of memories came, each one at my expense. The ice cream truck lie, the stuffed animals running away, the cruel trick about my face sticking forever. Every laugh grew louder, but to me, it was an echo chamber of cruelty. They thought it was harmless nostalgia. For me, it was a reminder of how I had been the family's punchline my entire life. I chewed in silence, my chest tightening, a storm gathering beneath my calm expression. And that's when Amanda leaned in, eyes glinting, ready to deliver her next punchline. Something was about to break. I sat in my apartment replaying every detail of that night. Amanda's words weren't just cruel. They were the truth my family had always acted on. I was never wanted. Not in their eyes. The laughter at dessert wasn't random. It was a pattern that stretched across my childhood. Every prank, every dismissal, every minimized tear. It all came rushing back with merciless clarity. They hadn't laughed with me. They'd laughed at me. And I had carried that weight for 32 years. Always the forgotten child. Always the family's scapegoat. I thought of being 12. The whispered lies that I was adopted. The way my sisters smirked when I cried myself to sleep. My mother's shrug, my father's silence. No one ever defended me. I thought of high school. My essays ignored while Jessica's trophies filled shelves. Amanda's art hung on every wall, while my awards stayed in boxes, invisible, replaceable, forgettable. And then I thought of last night. The way they roared with laughter. My mother wiping her eyes with pride at their cruelty. My father chuckling, saying kids will be kids. But we weren't kids anymore. Something inside me snapped. Not the kind that breaks, the kind that finally wakes up. I saw the truth clearly. I would never matter to them. Not as a teacher, not as a daughter, not as myself. And if I stayed, I would die invisible in their shadow. I closed my eyes and whispered the only vow that mattered. I will not be their target again. I will not sit at their table, pretending cardboard cake tastes sweet. I will disappear. Not in defeat, but in power. Not running away, but walking forward. If Amanda wished I was never born, then I would grant her a version of that wish. I would remove myself from their lives entirely. The silence in my apartment felt different now. It wasn't emptiness. It was possibility. A chance to finally live for me, without waiting for their scraps of approval. That night, I opened my laptop. I searched for teaching jobs in other cities. Seattle, Portland, Denver. Places far enough away to erase casual visits. By morning, applications were already sent. I deleted old voicemails. I drafted an email to change my number. Each click felt like a small act of freedom. Every step was proof. I was preparing to vanish from their world. I looked around my small apartment. The furniture was secondhand. The walls plain. But for the first time it felt like mine. Not a holding space. Not a reminder of failure. It was a launchpad for freedom. And in that silence I decided, the Catherine they knew was gone. A new Catherine was about to be born. 3 weeks after that dinner, the calls kept coming. First my mother, then Jessica, even Amanda, leaving messages full of fake cheer. I didn't answer any of them. I watched my phone light up on the counter. Their voices spilled into voicemail. Catherine, we're worried. Catherine, don't be childish. Catherine, call us back. I deleted each one without listening to the end. Every click was a boundary. Every silence was a wall I finally controlled. For once, I wasn't the one begging for attention. They were. Then came the knocks on my apartment door. I sat inside, quiet, as Mom's voice filtered through. Sweetheart, please, just open up. But I stayed still, heart steady. She had laughed when Amanda wished I was never born. Now she was crying in my hallway. Now she wanted access to the daughter she erased. But I had already chosen. I would not be their scapegoat again. The Catherine they remembered was gone. By the 6th week I was gone too. The movers carried boxes while I stood by the window. Seattle waited for me with open arms. A new school, a new start, a new nameplate on my desk. Principal Reynolds called me a fresh light. Colleagues shook my hand with genuine respect. Students smiled like my presence mattered. It startled me at first. To be valued without conditions. To be seen without comparison. No one in my family knew where I'd gone. I'd changed my number, redirected my mail. Their messages hit dead ends. Their worry turned into desperation. And their desperation turned into silence. For the first time, they felt my absence. No mediator at holiday dinners. No listener for their endless monologues. No Catherine smoothing conflict with quiet patience. The glue had finally gone. I heard about it through whispers. An old neighbor, a cousin's Facebook post, hints that Jessica and Amanda were fighting. Without me, their alliance cracked. Without me, their laughter turned sharp at each other. Vindication didn't come as fireworks. It came as peace. Sitting in my new apartment, books stacked by the window, sunlight pouring in. I smiled as I brewed tea. The same tea I once drank alone in sadness. Now it tasted different. Now it tasted like freedom. Freedom with edges sharp enough to cut ties clean. When my father finally called the school looking for me, the secretary relayed his words. She's our glue. Please tell her we miss her. But I wasn't glue anymore. I was stone. I had built a life they couldn't touch. A life where their laughter no longer echoed. A life where Amanda's wish had backfired. Because she got what she wanted. A world without me. And without me, their world was falling apart. Years passed, and silence became my sanctuary. I built a career that mattered. I built friendships that lifted me. I built a life stitched with choice, not obligation. In Seattle, I wasn't invisible. I wasn't the forgotten middle child. I was Catherine. Teacher, leader, friend, a woman valued for her voice. And that was enough. I met David at a bookstore on a rainy night. He asked about the novel in my hands. We argued playfully about the ending. And somehow that argument turned into love. With him, I was never compared. Never minimized. He saw me fully. He listened when I spoke. He celebrated my small wins like they were mountains. The wedding was small but beautiful. My hiking friends stood by me. His family welcomed me as their own. There were no cruel jokes, only warmth and laughter that healed. Sometimes I thought about my mother's letter, the apologies, the recognition that came too late. I didn't hate her anymore, but I didn't owe her access to my peace. Forgiveness and reconciliation are not the same. When our daughter was born, I named her Hope, because she would never wonder if she belonged. She would never doubt her worth. Her life would start in love, not scarcity. Looking at her, I understood my journey. Amanda's wish had been a curse, but I turned it into a blessing. They lost me, but I found myself. And that was the real victory. So if you've ever been dismissed, minimized, or erased, remember this. You are not invisible. You are not disposable. You are more powerful than their laughter. Sometimes walking away is the loudest answer of all. Before saying goodbye, if this story touched your heart, please give it a like. And share it with someone who needs to hear this today. Don't forget to subscribe for more true family betrayal stories. That reminds us we are stronger than we think.